Dear friend of mine, Stump, has showed up. If everybody doesn't know Stump, but also goes to a lot of conventions, look at Stump. You will see them everywhere. They will materialize. It's like Beetlejuice, except instead of a mirror, you just say it to an open con hall. Stump, 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 and there he is. It's fantastic.
Do you want to give your backstory as how you got into TASBot first, or do you want me to start?
You go first, because I actually don't know how you ended up into the community.
Okay, so hi, I'm Travis, or TiKevin83. You might be confused now why my name is TiKevin83. Like, it's TI83 like the calculator, right? But then why is it Kevin if my name is Travis? So whenever I played Pokemon growing up on Pokemon Emerald, my friend Brad, he had a cousin who he was borrowing this cartridge from named Kevin. So whenever I played Pokemon, I'd be playing on a save file named Kevin. So that's where we get TiKevin83. And then in 2016, there was a big surge of activity in the Pokemon speedrunning community because of a switchover from real-time to or from in-game time to real-time runs. And I got into speedrunning Pokemon Yellow around that same time and streaming it. And then around 2017, 2018, when I moved back home from Oklahoma, where I went to college, to Michigan, I started going to GDQs. And I think the second one that I went to was when I met the TASBot team. I saw them doing Super Monkey Ball at, I think it was AGDQ 2018. And then at SGDQ 2018, I actually met all of them and started hanging out. And I came in with my TI-83 calculator, showing people code I had written on it, and they were like, "Oh, you're perfect here." So I just stuck around from there and have been doing TASBot projects ever since.
That's fantastic. The fun thing about the TASBot community is that no matter how nerdy you are, we have somebody who is nerdier. I always joke that we're a niche community of an already niche community that is part of a nicher community. Tassing, come on. Who knows what that is, first of all? And then to follow up with that, we make a computer do it. So, we're uber nerds. And I am very proud to say, TiKevin, that I also used to carry the TI-83 programming manual in my backpack. That's how I learned whatever their bastardization of assembly was. Well, I'm Taters, otherwise known as Danny, sometimes, depending on what circle we're in. I ended up in the TASBot community actually in AGDQ 2018. So I knew we were close, but I didn't know how close. And it's all because I couldn't keep my big fat mouth shut. I really just wanted to know about Dwango AC's laptop. He had a really neat looking laptop, and we ended up in a hot tub together. And then I became a project manager. My application to become a project manager for the TASBot community was very simple. Dwango was like, "Hey, we need a project manager," and I said, "I can read his calendar, so I'm overqualified." And now I'm a presenter. Yeah. But yes, the TASBot community is full of thousands of people all over the world. You might be surprised that while we often get mistaken for Dwango, me for my slim figure and him for his nice beard, we aren't, as you can tell. However, there are four presenters, myself, yourself.
Axeman. Axeman's done stuff on his own, I think.
Axeman, Dwango.
Onosaurus and
Blaster.
CompuCat? Does he have anything that he does?
I don't think CompuCat's a a presenter, but I know that Blaster
G2K9 has made the TASBots.
Yes.
I'm sure he could do it.
So we do have a joke that we don't allow all the TASBots to show up at the same event, I guess to preserve the magic. Dwango's really weird. If you guys can't tell that from looking at him on stage, boy, we're going to tell you some stories, aren't we? But yes, there are 4 complete and I think at least 1 incomplete TASBots that float around the world as we get everything out. They're actually all custom designed specifically to be legally distinct from a specific Nintendo property that you may all remember that we're not going to talk about because we said don't sue us, for the love of God, don't sue us. They're busy going after emulators right now, which is definitely something TASBot never does on stage with an inaccurate emulator and a commentator who's never actually saw the run. All right. So that was a weirdly good segue, in my opinion, and I hope you guys all agree. And since I have the microphone, you guys all agree. That's a great segue into one of my favorite BS events. So I want to tell you guys, this is going to be a different thing than what you normally see. We're not going to do a run. We're not going to, sit up here and talk about Triforce percent. Actually, we are, but in a different tone.
Taters, should we ask first who in the room knows what TASBot is? Is everybody here because they know what TASBot is?
Okay, all right.
Okay, there's
so
a good
some
chunk of
people
people who
don't.
don't. So we should probably start with that.
You want me to go?
I'll do it. Okay, so we are also, at least I am an ambassador for TASVideos.org. TASVideos.org is like speedrun.com, where they archive speedrun records and have moderator groups to make sure that those are legitimate records. But for TAS videos, instead of it being humans in real time, it's people who are making these, they're kind of like piano rolls of scripts of inputs to go through a game and play frame by frame by frame and beat the game as fast as possible. And they create those in an emulator that can be rewound and restarted to go over and over again until you find a perfect sequence of input to beat a game. So that's TAS. So when he said niche within a niche within a niche, so like niche is speed running, right? Like you're not just video gaming, you're speed running. And then you're tool assisted speed running, where you're doing it frame by frame and rewinding to build a perfect script of inputs. So then TASBot is this niche within that, where we're taking those input scripts and we're verifying them on console hardware. So that means we either plug into the controller port of a console, or if it's, sometimes there's consoles that have other consoles in them for backwards compatibility reasons, like the Game Boy Player on the GameCube. So we hijack the GameCube to play the Game Boy Player for us. So we don't actually even need to plug anything into the controller port. So we do these, we call them console verifications, because we're verifying that the emulator script runs exactly the same way that the actual console runs the game. And I wanted to explain that before Taters dove into more of the stories about TASBot at conventions.
And it's important to note that TASBot as a community specifically is for console verifications. That's what we do every day. However, for some reason, we have ended up finding a platform at events like this. So we use these platforms to spread the love of TASing and console verification. So that's why we show up at places like GDQ, Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, and other events. MagFest, we're going to be at MagFest this year. So that's going to be fun. But yes, so let's talk about some events, because everybody knows us knows that we go to GDQ. That's why I wear the highlighter dyed GDQ t-shirt. We have had a lot of very fun shenanigans that happen behind the scenes before you see the, I wanted to say polished presentation, but polished is kind of a strong word. So let's say maybe burnished presentation that comes up on stage. One of my favorite events is AGDQ2019. That was the event where we ran the MashBot, which was where we used a robot to move the stylus of a 3DS and tap and actually TAS a game on the stage in a 3DS. We also ran, I think, Castlevania Symphony of the Night that week, or that event.
Yeah, and that's because usually we're not like having a rig around a controller. We're just bypassing the controller entirely and plugging in where the controller would plug in. But for a DS, you don't have that. So we were actually created a rig that could tap a DS screen for us.
Yes, and the MashBot bot was an absolute hardware nightmare. It was basically a 3D printer, but instead of an extruder, it had a stylus, and it was built hastily, even though it was taken over multiple months, maybe even over a year. It was kind of procrastinated on, and the guy who built it just kind of was like, "Oh shoot, I got to do an event." So we did that. But just getting that particular individual, Funkmaster, to the event was fantastic, and that is mostly a TiKevin story.
Yeah, this was AGDQ 2019 and MagFest that we did this, and
I forgot about MagFest.
Funkmaster was the person who built MashBot, and he lives in Toronto, and I'm in Michigan. And so I was like, oh, this looks like it's kind of on the way on a map. Like you just go east to Toronto, and then you go south to Maryland. Like that looks kind of on the way. And then so I drove to Toronto. That was fine. And then I drove south. And once you get to Pennsylvania, there's no highways north-south in Pennsylvania. I did not know this.
There's mountains north south in Pennsylvania.
So like the entire drive through Pennsylvania, it took like 7 or 8 hours. It was like 30 miles an hour the whole time on like city to city back roads. So, and this is a great story to tell in Pennsylvania. I didn't even realize that.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So we finally got to Maryland, where we did the talk and the show. We had first at MagFest, we had the machine sign TASBot's autograph. So that was great. And then we had to get to GDQ, but then I started having a migraine from driving for 15 hours. So P4 had to take over and drive MashBot the rest of the way to GDQ. And we finally got there, and then...
Oh, let's be honest. You were at GDQ twice. They hit GDQ on the way down because GDQ at that event was in Virginia, Maryland. Was that Bethesda?
Oh,
somewhere around there.
I can't remember the exact
Doesn't matter.
city.
Nobody
It was near the capitals.
Yeah. So it was there, and then MagFest is in National Harbor, so fairly close. So they decided to stop at the hotel or event hotel the day before the event. We call that day zero. A number of us like to show up at day zero, get our bearings, find food, liquor, all of those fun things. So I was a simple project manager at that time. And the fun thing about project management for TASBot is that there is no actual project management. Things are just done, and then they tell you maybe. So if anybody here works professionally in like an office setting and has to do project management, your head would explode because Dwango will just unilaterally decide things, and then 2 weeks down the road, you'll be like, hey, can I get an update on X? And he'll be like, no, we did Y like 2 weeks ago. Well, what the hell? could we talk about these things? So me and my con crew, because we all have our own crews that come along with us, are in our hotel room. We've done day zero, which means that we've had several adult beverages, several more than probably should have had, and probably a few more beyond that. And I'm just laying down in bed. It's probably 2 a.m. and my phone does the bzz, I thought I'm drunk. I'll take a look, and it's Funkmaster. Hey, can you come down to the practice room and help? And I'm like, who are you? So I go down there with my co-project manager Brosman, and Funkmaster's down there. MashBot is not complete. This is like the event is happening. MashBot's not complete. Can you help us? Now, outside of this, I run a makerspace, so I'm kind of fairly moderately all right with my hands. And I'm like, cool, we're gonna fix this stupid thing, and then I'm gonna go to bed. That cuts to us. AGQs are in the winter, running around whatever city we were in, finding a Harris Teeter that was still open at 2 o'clock in the morning, drunk. Oh. And we ended up fixing MashBot at about 4 a.m. with a button. The stylus wasn't staying centered, and we hot glue in a button, cut a hole out of a button and put the stylus through it, just so that he could then go to MagFest, which again was not scheduled, to run and do the signatures, which we hadn't completed the actual G code for yet, so it couldn't even do that, and then come back. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing that on me. I had the biggest headache the next day. Taters are getting up there in years. But yeah, so I can move that a little bit further there. So in the early days, I wouldn't even call TASBot controlled chaos or constrained chaos. It was just absolute chaos, and somehow we ended up on a stage. And instead of looking around and going, where are we? We just stood on a show. That event was a really good tipping point for trying to get things into order, because there's no video that exists because the way GDQ changes their displays. But if there was, the stage for GDQ is in front of the crowd, and there's usually a hall and a way in the center for people to walk up. Walking up to the stage, I've got Funk on my right, still fiddling with the robot, making sure that the connections are good and everything's still moving. And another member of our community, P4+2, P4 as it was responded to or referenced earlier, who is holding a laptop, compiling the show that we're about to give. Within the hour before, we were still writing the run that was showing up. And if you go back and watch that run, it was a really complicated run that had all sorts of really fun stuff like
Scribblenauts was the main
That
focus.
was it was Scribblenauts, yes. And we decided we were going to be nuts because we were nuts in that time, and we wanted to integrate Twitch chat because we were integrating. That was the new hotness at the moment. We were integrating Twitch chat into everything, and we wanted to run a poll. We wanted Twitch chat to vote on a poll, and that would give them 4 options for every problem in the Scribblenaut run, and then Mashbot would knock it out and make it work. We only had 2 complete answers for each question. Some questions we only had 1 complete. This is the dark secrets of TASBot. So we were live manipulating the votes on Twitch because we have 1,000 people in our Discord who are like, hey, to get this to run. And we knew that like some of the memeier ones, like, oh, do it with a dead lion would win. So we were really banking on that. But if you go back and watch, first of all, the layout is complete jank. You can't even read the results because we didn't interact with the layout team. GDQ is a massive undertaking for the size of the event, and the layout team is great, but we need to talk to them sometimes, and we don't. And so you can't read anything. But during that time, had Twitch chat caught on and just picked the mundane option, the bot would have just crashed. There would have been no input. And we're all sitting up there kind of like nervously laughing about it, like, I hope everybody picks the dead lion. And everybody picked the dead lion, and then we did it. Yeah, that was just a carnival of failures that somehow ended up showing up on stage, and everybody loved it. Do you remember the Castlevania run from that same event?
I didn't watch all of it, but I remember what happened with it, where there's a classic Castlevania run that was done on Game Boy Advance. Is it Symphony of the Night?
I think it's Aria of Sorrow.
Aria of Sorrow.
Aria.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance has a task run that's published. It's very, very good. It's like a classic. It's a very good example of the difference between human play and perfect play. And we wanted to find a commentator who could sit up on stage and actually talk through what happened in the run. And we found somebody who had played it, and we're like, hey, can you do this? And they were like, sure. Oh, yeah, I'll do a commentary. And then they got up there and they were like silent the whole time. And so we talked to them more. Apparently they hadn't actually ever played the game.
No, it's not that they hadn't played the game. They were a runner of the game. We identified a runner that actually ran the game. And that was all well and good. And like I say, I joke about us being chaotic, but we do have some things that we tend to get in line before we go up, and commentary is one of them. So this particular individual I interacted with, they were like, yep, I totally want to do this. This is great. The whole time we're at the event, this individual is missing in action. We cannot find them. We cannot contact them. They're not responding to any messages. They know when the run is, and that's it. Now we're trying to sit down. Usually we would get a runner to come down and say, hey, all right, let's sit down. We're going to watch the run. You're going to understand. We'll explain some of the secret tech behind it, and then you can talk about that as well. None of that was done. And in fact, we didn't know. And you weren't there at that event, right?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay. So that's the event that I met TiKevin, because I met TiKevin over a very nice glass of Lafroy Scotch. Because I was on the TAS Videos forums doxing the Japanese gentleman who originally created the run so that I could get a hold of them through badly translated Google Translate to speak to them to get notes about the run, because you might find this funny. I have a crippling anxiety disorder that precludes me from being on stage at GDQ. And I was just going to go up and do it because we didn't have anything. We had nothing. We had no backup, no idea what was going on. Mm-hmm. And then finally, after I had written out all the script notes, and I was like, I will just, I'll just grab the laptop and I'll go up and just read it off like this, but I'll try to be entertaining about it. I lost my notes. Anyway, the runner finally responds, and he's like, hey, I'll be down in just a minute. Awesome. So he gets down there, and yeah, he had never seen the run, never tried to watch it, and just stood up there. Durango used to do this thing back in the past where he would go up on stage and act like he didn't know what was happening. He'd be like, oh, what's happening now? And it was very disingenuous. And I yelled at him quite a lot when I became part of the team. I was like, everybody knows that you have not walked on that stage not knowing what's going on. You know, the Brain Age run, wonderful, but you've seen it. Trust me. This is one of those times when nobody saw it, and the guy gets up there and he's just like, so yeah, that happened, and wow. And that makes for gripping television. I tell you what, we never worked with that person again. But another fun part about that is we generally and only recently have the rules changed at GDQ that allow us to run an emulator. But previously, we always ran the games on the consoles on the actual game carts. We lost the Castle or the Area of Sorrows cart somewhere in transit, and this was my first event where I was starting. So I just wandered up. Now, is anybody in here like into emulation? Yes, we got some nerds and some lesser nerds, but you'll get there. Don't worry. Just keep hanging out at places like this. It'll happen. I, as a lesser nerd, was like, oh, we'll just run this like Visual Boy Advance thing. Does anybody understand why Dwango almost punched me? No, super inaccurate GBA.
Definitely
emulator.
not what the task would have been made on.
No, not only that, but probably wouldn't have even run. Now that I understand like how bad that emulator is, probably wouldn't have even run. And I was just the dumbass in the second corner going like, hey, why don't we just run it on this? No. And that was possibly the only time I've ever seen Dwango. No, that's such a lie. I've pissed Dwango off so many times. That's the first time I saw Dwango yell. He yelled loud.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get thrown out of the practice room for that.
Another fun one before we did the 2019 stuff. There was we've been around long enough that we've been there for some of like the early days of GDQ stuff. So we were there for the first year of GDQX at TwitchCon, and it was held in the basement of TwitchCon, and there was very lax security around like getting stuff like our equipment in and out of the show to do verification. So we there was like a hotel on each side of the convention, and then the convention in the center. And the practice room where we could set up our event was over here in one of the hotels. But then we had to, like, once we set up all our equipment and made sure it worked in the practice room, we had to take it into the convention. So we went there at like 2 a.m. and because they had like all this like magnet security, so they didn't want people bringing electronics through the gates, and nobody knew that we were with GDQ or anything. So we just like went through at 2 a.m. and it was like they had hired people for security, but it was just like three random dudes. They weren't wearing uniforms or anything. They just like, okay, sure, you're go through. So we got the equipment down in the middle of the night, and then we were able to actually show our runs. We did 2 runs. One was a Windows task, which if you know anything about tassing, there are almost no tasks of Windows games for a good reason. The Windows system tries very hard to be safe with stuff that you play on it, and that usually precludes things like playing back macros, playing games over and over again, and it does some stuff that kind of confuses tasking systems. So we tried to play Hyper Princess Pitch, and it would run exactly every other time that you ran the task. So I had to run it once, and it crashed, and then I ran it again, and it started working. But then I forgot to plug my laptop in. So like 10 minutes into the 20-minute long run, my laptop went to sleep, and we had to cancel showing the rest of that run. And then we got to doing my Pokemon run, which was a new run, and that one worked well. But it was just crazy how the schedule for that TwitchCon didn't mention that there was GDQ going on at the TwitchCon. You just kind of had to know that it was in the basement. So you go down there, and it's like tucked like down a giant escalator around a storage closet. Back there's like 100 seats, and there were people there, and I was like, "This is great that people even found this because it was so hidden."
I'll take these two.
Yeah,
you know, and it's funny. First of all, TASBot absolutely at home in a basement. That's kind of where we thrive. But he was talking about our hardware. So TASBot is not just the little robot, right? Like that's just a mascot that seems to have worked for us. Funny enough, the arms come off or the hands come out, and we have other hands that are mounts for the actual hardware. I hear. That's a good noise. Well, hopefully it doesn't bother anybody.
This isn't as bad as the con we did last year where a wrestling match happened next to the...
Yes.
Literally behind us, our panel, there was a wrestling match going on.
But anyway, hey, if you stay long enough, maybe we'll have a wrestling match up here. You want to go for it? But anyway, so we have our own specialized hardware. We do actually develop the boards that we use that interface between, what is an STM32? TM32, yeah, and a controller port. So we have a lot of specialized hardware, and with specialized hardware comes all of the specialized jank that you can imagine. TASBot runs are super finicky, or at least they were in the really early days. And back in AGDQ 2014 and 2015, some of our earliest runs that you can see, we made some cardinal sins that we didn't know. So for example, in 2014, when we did Gradius, we kept desyncing. We couldn't figure out why. Desync is when you're running a task and then the inputs aren't doing what you expect on the output. It's like the game has desynchronized and your task won't complete. Very unlikely that you're going to recover from that. We did it on stage like 4 times in a row. After the postmortem, we discovered that we had cables, just cables laying over top of each other was enough to create electromagnetic radiation that was injecting or removing commands as they were going. Completely screwed it up. And that's not the only time we've done it. We had an NES in 2015 that we put, GDQ had a metal like wire rack shelf. We put the NES on it, and the bad shielding in the NES was able to let EMR escape, hit the shelving, which acted as an antenna and amplifier, and just blew out like all the runs desynced. We could not get that to happen whatsoever. So like, not only do we have hardware,
because normally, like if you're working over Ethernet, if like a packet fails, it's fine. You just send the packet again, everything goes fine. But with this, if you send a packet and it doesn't get to the controller port, then you haven't done an input that you need to have happen to then have the next thing happen. So, like I think Ethernet probably is not the best cabling, like shielding system for us to use.
You know, they have a shielded cable. Yeah. You know that, right? You could use that. No.
No, we never did that.
Nah. See, we got a lot of smart people, but a lot of dumb mistakes that are pretty fantastic. Are you familiar with some of the fun stuff in this run?
No, I wasn't as involved in the creation of the Triforce % stuff.
Well, I was hoping these people are going to be tired of listening to me talk. I have a very nasally voice. Anyway, who here knows about Triforce %? All right, obviously we know about Triforce %. You're one of the groupies. Triforce % is where a very long culmination of a lot of people, not just in the TASBot community, but from the Zelda community, created a task of Ocarina of Time that uses a code injection bug to allow us to put our own code in and then execute it. So it starts out as a very simple run of like, here's some stuff that was on the cartridge. You know, because it's well known if you look into it. There's some assets from like Star Fox and stuff. I think it is on the cartridge.
Yeah, random debug assets.
Yeah, and then we start controlling the game through the controller ports and adding more and more assets. So, long story short, you should go watch it. Being in that room when that run was shown, which COVID actually stopped that run several times. We wanted it to be in person because of how important it was. Basically, TASBot gets the Triforce in Ocarina of Time. Very important moment, as well as another very heartfelt moment that would really hit really hard after COVID. However, behind the scenes was some of the most insane stuff that we've run into. One of the people absolutely flat out demanded an autograph booth at GDQ. Now, for those of you that have been to GDQ and those of you who have not, there is no autograph booth at GDQ. There is no autographs signed at GDQ.
They don't have a vendor hall like you'd have at PGX.
No, it's very much a speedrun and fun focused event. And we told this individual, no, that's just not how the event works. What are you talking about? Well, that individual has, let's say, a lot of self-confidence, and marched up to the organizer of the event and demanded an autograph booth. And I thought the organizer was going to explode. several different colors of red across their face. Like, what are you even talking to me about this for? Needless to say, there was no autograph booth at GDQ for that event. And I mean, personality, fun stuff aside, I met that person I was like, oh, I'm going to take this event as a vacation, right? And met the person and was like, oh, all right, never mind. I'm not going to involve myself with TASBot at all this year. And just walked away. They were great people to hang out with. We have since smoothed everything over. We sit side by side and swap war stories. It's great. However, we also had some fun things where during the time, and you can see the TASBot's eyes animate. These are all custom animations that we make, the community makes. We had actually created a number of custom ones for the event. But TASBot's body is not smart. There's a Raspberry Pi inside of his head with a custom interface for the board. And to control TASBot, we don't really have like sophisticated means. There's a script running on TASBot that's running the eyes, and you can SSH into TASBot and change those eyes. We didn't realize how hard it would be to actually synchronize those with the run because we had the custom ones for the run. So we had one of our guys, Copycat, sitting behind the scenes, right behind the cameras and the tables, watching and listening, because behind there you can't really hear too well what's going on. And sometimes you can see some monitors, but where he was sitting, he couldn't, because he also had to see TASBot. Kind of guessing with an SSH console on his phone, tapping out the names of the new eyes to run. And yeah, it was great. We actually had a wireless IEM receiver, so like if you're on stage as a band, you have a body pack that has an ear piece, so you can hear your band and hear yourself. We had one that was modifiable, so we could change the frequency. And don't tell anybody, but we hijacked GDQ's frequencies just so that we could get audio cues from what was going on while he was doing that. Stump over there happens to help a lot with GDQ, so we're just going to hope he didn't hear any of that, right? Yeah. Hey, you know what? If you leave those frequencies open and you don't encrypt them, I'm going to take them. They're my frequencies as well, comrade. They're our frequencies. What else here? You got any other ones that are dying?
Oh yeah. So the other major runs that I was involved in were AGDQ 2020 and 2021 because my background is very heavily, like I said, Pokemon Yellow, like Gen 1 Pokemon. That's on the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So we use that Game Boy player setup to do verifications on there. And in AGDQ 2020, we showed a run of Pokemon Blue as a bonus run. And so I had met with what I thought was the layout team to like go over and make sure everything was ready for the run. It turns out I didn't. I just met with a random person who was on GDQ staff who wasn't the layout team. They didn't talk to each other. There was some miscommunication. So during the run, I was saying things like, and you can see the controller buttons on the screen here as the task is going. None of that was on screen. I was just like saying, I was just like pointing to nothing. It still worked great. Like the run played, we verified it. We even we did this joke where you used to kill a metapod 3 times to get through the sequence of glitching. So we had 3 different famous Pokemon speedrunners as commentators, and one of them said, and now we need to fight a level 9 metapod, and once we kill it, we'll be able to do the glitching. And then the next person did, and now we'll fight a level 9 metapod, and once we do it, because we did it 3 times, and then we actually finally glitched the run, so that was really fun. And then the same thing happened with AGDQ 2021. I thought I had met with somebody to explain the layout system. They never communicated with the actual layout team, so I was talking and pointing to buttons that weren't actually happening. And then there's a common thing also that happens with GDQ where GDQ is a charity event. We want to use our name TASBot for charity and have that benefit for the organization we're raising money for. But also often that conflicts with the ability of us to properly commentate and attribute the source of runs that we get from TAS Videos. I might be TAS Videos staff, but that doesn't mean that I personally have created every task that is put up on tasvideos.org. So we try to tell them, hey, we need these 3 people's names up there too as authors. Sometimes there's confusion over that, and we've worked since to try to improve that for the future with the layouts team.
I am absolutely maniacal about attributions on these runs because, what are we doing, right? We just get up there, we click, we're like Skrillex pushing play at a concert, right? And they're just going, right? So I don't want anybody to ever think that myself or Dwango was the actual work that was put into this.
Unless we did do the actual work, which once or twice I've done.
Yes, it happens. Don't get me wrong. But so after, and I'm going to take this second right now to do this here. There's a specific TASer that has helped with, I think, every run we've ever put on, because they've helped with every run ever. If you go to TASBvideos.org, they're an absolute legend. The individual's name is Master June. And I have joked that if we just say Master June's name enough times, I will at least eventually start to feel like we've brought enough attention to that person. Every single run, every one I've done that has nothing to do with him, I can ask them and say, hey, do you know about this? Oh, yeah, here's all the really weird tech. And I'll look back in the history and, oh, yeah, they ran the game a year. I think they've run every single game that exists.
Yeah, Master June loves doing April Fool's tasks too. And there's one that Master June has done of, he tasked Linux installing Linux. So it's like a VM inside of Linux, and he's tasking how long it takes to install it. He did a different one. I think that it is mathematically proven to be able to beat Super Mario Bros., but it would take like longer than the number of atoms, and it would never actually be able to finish it in the reality of the universe. But mathematically, it's proven that it would. So you can start playing it, and eventually it will beat Super Mario Bros., just not in your lifetime.
There's a lot of very nerdy jokes in the community, and if you guys are interested in any way, please join. Because, hey, one of you guys might actually take my place. Please take my place. I need to sleep. I'll tell you what, though, one of my favorite April Fool's tasks has been the Shrek Game Boy Advance video.
Yeah.
Credits warp.
This is one that we often get to show in person more at conventions, because we can't show it. Well, we can show it online, but we don't get revenue out of it because it gets stolen by DreamWorks, because it's their property. I just stolen is probably a strong word, but we have a task that is a credits warp of the Shrek GBA movie. In other words, it goes into the chapter select for the movie Shrek and clicks credits, and it goes straight to the credits.
It's one of the best tasks ever, and I really hope that someday we can put it up on the stage at like GDQ, because everybody would absolutely love it.
I have one video where I showed Dank Pods this task live at LTX. And I have like the background blurred out so you can't actually see the video, so it doesn't get copyright strike.
Yeah, and we would go up there every time we try to do a run. We always look for, how do we make memes out of it? How do we make this fun for the crowd? Because sometimes it could be just boring as hell. I mean, let's be honest, just watching a game played perfectly with no glitches and everything like that, some people are super into that, some people are super not. And if you go on Speedrun Discord after one of our showcases at GDQ, you'll have like both contingents complaining about us. It's so wonderful. And then Dwango wades in his own special way to be like, no, but actually, and they're like, we don't care, we just want to be angry because we're the internet. Yeah, so I would love to see that one up there. Like, no one's business. I would hype it up. I'd be like, this is the greatest run you've ever seen. We've completed this run in record time, and no one has ever been able to.
You're talking about how some events will go and we'll show a very classic task. This is like a basic, this is the fastest way to beat Super Mario Bros. And then we'll get people complain, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen TASBot do. Why isn't he showing something cooler like Brain Age? And then we'll show something like a Brain Age. Why are they doing stuff that's not actual speed runs?
You can't make the internet happy, and I've stopped trying years ago. At this point, I just try to make people on stage laugh. It's ridiculous. Well, we have about 6 minutes by that watch, and well, this watch is wrong. So, does anybody have any questions? I would love to answer any questions. If not, I'm going to just sit up here and flounder for 5 minutes. So please help me help you. Come on. I'm starting to get the anxiety. It's rising. If I pass out here, y'all can say, oh, hey, we got one in the back.
How does the DS, how does that work with TASBot, playing on the DS?
The question was, how does interacting with a DS work? So, not very well. Taters was mentioning, it's basically like a 3D printer that was modified to have a stylus instead of an extruder, where it would be putting out the what is it called, the rosin for the printing.
The film, yeah.
And so it's just pressing down a series of commands, because these tasks are just scripts of commands to do with the game. So it would have a script of all the places it needs to press the screen. The problem with this was that the 3D printer type machines, their pressing is very strong. So over time, it would wear down the stylus and the screen it was tapping.
Yeah.
So this only worked for a limited period of time, and then we'd have to replace the stylus and or the DS that it was tapping.
Fun fact about that run, if you go back and watch it for some reason, it's one of my favorite runs we've ever done. Not only because I have a personal connection to it. I have a younger sister, and the copy of Super Scribblenauts that's being run in the DS is her childhood copy. And I think if you watch when it pops up on the screen, Sarah is her name, is one of the saves. That's her childhood save on the game. Yeah, we shipped it to Canada at great expense. Man, shipping things to Canada from PA was like $40 to send a game card. And then I got it back at the event.
Yeah, I had to buy gas in liters and never knew how much I was spending. And when I got home, I was like, oh my goodness. I did luck out. I was able to get gas in Detroit on the way out, and I think I made it all the way through to like the Niagara Falls area before I had to fill up. But on the way back, I had to fill up in Canada. That was
yeah.
I think I also got charged for like roaming data, but I was on my company phone plan, so like my company got charged like $100 in data roaming expenses.
Oh, all right. Any other questions? Come on. All right. Nothing's off limits. I can show you what's inside TASBot's butt. I'm going to show you that anyway.
Taters, do you have any projects going on right now that you want to tell the people about before we wrap up?
Wow, you should have asked me that beforehand. That way I don't look like an ass when I go, no. Was I supposed to? Shit. Did I forget about
you have
project?
a makerspace that you run that's cool, right?
Oh, yeah, but I wasn't going to brag about that. Okay. I run a makerspace out. I live out in Harrisburg area, if anybody's out in that way. If anybody's into makerspaces, it's called Keystone Makers. We're out of Marysville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, thanks for asking. Hey, if anybody wants to donate money monthly, let me know. I'm back in the red because I just extended our lease. Mm-hmm. It was financially unsound. Yep. That's why I'm the president.
And I'm an ambassador for task videos, but I actually just did a task for the first time again in a while of the game Carnage Rally, spelled Karnaaj, Carnage Rally, for the Game Boy Advance. It's famous mostly for its box art more than the game it is itself, but the game it is actually an incredible racing game, so it made very good fodder for doing a task, and like I said, like showing the difference between how fast you can play if you play perfectly versus a human racing around the track. So that was a really cool one to do a task of. So check out Carnage Rally Tassing on YouTube, and you might find me there.
You know what else is cool? Stump, you're still after this, right? You're still after this talk here?
Yes, that's right.
Stump is awesome. Oh, Stump is awesome. Go find what room they're in. I have watched Stump sit alone at a convention with nobody around, run a Spyro game while commentating a Spyro game at an event that was very loud and not related to speedrunning, and it was absolutely the best thing I've seen there. That was RGB Land.
Yeah. Stump let me borrow his copy of Super Mario Land for the Game Boy for like 2 years, so I could work on verifying with it. So shout outs there for that.
You were also running the stream and audio at that run too. That was, you had 4 different jobs. That was, yes, Stump is a person of all skill set, and I guarantee has the greatest talk next because of course it's part of Pokemon. And I have big Pikachu tattoos. Please don't ask to see them. I had one woman walk up to me once and see it on my back and like scratched it and smacked it while laughing. And I was like, it's not scratch and sniff. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm very uncomfortable and I really wish you would stop. I think that's our time.
Thanks everyone for coming and listening to TASBot at PGX2024.
Oh,
it's still 2024, right?